Hi, this is Hunter Burry with Technically Speaking at Source Allies, and today we're going to go over AWS certifications, what they are, how to get them, and why you might want to get them. So first, let's start off with why you might want to get a certification. Right off the bat, cloud services are super popular right now. They've only gotten more popular over the last decade. It'll probably continue as well. And right now, AWS has about 50% of that cloud service market share. So definitely making it a great place to start your cloud journey. They also make it super easy to get started. They have a wide range of certifications. So really no matter your experience, your interest, there's definitely a certification for you somewhere. And then along that cloud journey, there's a lot of documentation, a lot of resources, either from AWS or outside sources that are definitely really helpful along the way. And then AWS also provides a super inclusive free tier to play around with the console, deploy infrastructure, play with applications and stuff that definitely makes it super helpful to get started on that journey. And then so kind of want to start off with just going through some of the certifications that AWS offers. It's split up into 4 different levels. There's the foundational level, which consists of the cloud practitioner certification, gives you basic knowledge of cloud terminology and services offered by AWS. Next is the associate level. This is intended for people who have around 0 to 2 years with AWS and cloud technology in general. So this has the solutions architect, developer, and then SysOps administrator certifications. Next up is the professional level. Only 2 certifications there, the solutions architect and DevOps engineer. And this is for people with 2 or more years of experience with AWS. Lastly is the specialty level. This is for people who have deep technical expertise in the specialty domain. And here we have the advanced networking, data analytics, database, machine learning, security, and SAP on AWS certifications. So that's kind of a general rundown of how AWS structures their certifications, kind of a general overview of what areas they have, and then how they are broken up. So kind of now to dive a little deeper into some of the areas that they have, the certification paths that AWS recommends. Going to go through a couple of these. So first off is the solutions architect path. This really focuses on designing, developing, and managing cloud infrastructure and working with DevOps to migrate applications to the cloud. To start off here, there is the cloud practitioner foundational exam, just testing your cloud fluency and the foundational knowledge of AWS services. Next is the solutions architect associate exam, which is focused on designing and implementing distributed systems on AWS, and then kind of graduating onto that professional solutions architect certification, designing, deploying, evaluating applications on AWS with diverse and complex requirements. So similar here, but just adding in that caveat of the diversity and complexity of services and applications as well. And then lastly, there is the security specialty certification, focusing on expertise in securing data and workloads in the cloud. So yeah, definitely a focus on infrastructure, kind of the larger system design as a whole for applications, with that emphasis on security as well. And then the next path that I want to talk about is the software development engineer. Definitely more development focus here, kind of the day-to-day coding and stuff of AWS services, focused on developing, constructing, and maintaining software across different platforms. Once again, starting off with that cloud practitioner foundational certification, and then moving into the developer associate certification, testing your ability to write and deploy cloud-based applications. And then lastly, that DevOps engineer professional certification, which really focuses on automating testing and deployment of infrastructure and applications. So yeah, contrasting that with the solutions architect, it's definitely more focused on kind of the day-to-day coding, testing of applications, less about the actual infrastructure, deployment, and setup of these applications. And then lastly, the cloud engineer path that focuses on implementing and operating an organization's networked computing infrastructure and implementing security systems to maintain data safety. So a bit of a long one here, kind of a wide range of domains and certifications. Once again, starting off with that cloud practitioner foundational certification, moving into the SysOps administrator associate certification, focusing on deploying, managing, and operating workloads on AWS, and then moving into the security specialty certification. So going from associate to specialty, kind of mix and match different certifications depending on what is most important for that role, what you're interested in, stuff like that. So yeah, kind of the first time we've seen that with these paths. But yeah, once again, this focuses on that expertise in securing data in AWS. And then lastly, the DevOps engineer professional certification focusing on automating testing and deployment. And then the advanced networking specialty, first time we've seen this, that is focused on designing and maintaining network architecture for the breadth of AWS services. So yeah, definitely a longer kind of path here to specialty certifications as well. So this definitely covers a lot of different domains, different services offered by AWS. But yeah, kind of an extensive path there, a lot covered. So yeah, now I kind of want to move on to my certification path. I have gotten the cloud practitioner certification and the solutions architect certification at the associate level. Hopefully going to get the professional certification at some point, as I've now worked with AWS for around a year and a half, kind of right around that 2-year mark that AWS recommends. So yeah, just going to tell you a little bit about how I've got here. So I started off with zero AWS experience, hadn't really heard of any services, hadn't worked with any of them. And then my first few months at Source Allies, got to be around a bunch of people that have worked with AWS really extensively. Source Allies is a part of the Amazon partner network, which means they're a preferred provider of AWS solutions, work a lot with migrations. So being around that, definitely wanted to hone in my cloud skills, especially with AWS. So I started off with that cloud practitioner certification exam. Like I said, I had zero AWS experience going into it, but kind of slowly started to get introduced to different services and concepts. Did a little bit of CloudWatch logging, a little bit with Lambda, but that was kind of it for the most part. So to kind of supplement those services, I used a Cloud Guru, which is a website that has a lot of different platforms and technologies that they offer courses, tutorials, hands-on exercises, practice exams for. So definitely super helpful. And then got that cloud practitioner certification off of that. And then by this point, I had worked with a few extra services. Had probably done, around 3 months of AWS work. Nothing super extensive, but definitely more so than I started. Felt comfortable with the console and deploying resources. So then kind of turned my attention towards that solutions architect associate certification. Like I said, I only worked with a handful of services there. So to kind of add on to that, get a little more experience, I use Adrian Cantrell's course for the solutions architect exam. I had heard that this was one of the best courses. It has a lot of hands-on exercises. The lectures are really great as well. Can't recommend this enough. And I can kind of walk you through the website here. It's learncantrell.io, just to give you a general idea of kind of what sets this course apart from others, in my opinion. A lot of these diagrams throughout the lectures are super, super helpful, kind of showing you different architecture patterns, how different services work, how applications interact with each other. Super helpful there. Really can't recommend that enough. Made me feel a lot more comfortable with AWS as a whole, especially given these services that you get to work with throughout. The course will take you through creating IAM users, making an organization for those users to live under, deploying servers, deploying S3 buckets, deploying Lambdas, databases. There's so much that goes into this that really makes it feel like you're working on a real AWS project. Really helps you get comfortable working with the console, working with CloudFormation to deploy all these resources. And then, just kind of giving you that real feel of working on an AWS application outside of just, kind of studying lectures and taking notes and stuff like that. So that is one of the best resources that I used for the solutions architect exam. The next one I want to talk about is the Tutorial Dojo practice exams. If you look up anything about AWS exams, you will see these exams listed. They are hailed as the greatest resource for every certification exam, for a good reason. These were so helpful for me. Kind of just wanted to hone in on what the actual exam will be like. I'd gotten a lot of hands-on experience through the course I took, but there's just a lot of niche services, a lot of kind of super specific implementation details that maybe you wouldn't cover in a course, but you might get asked on the exam. And these practice exams at Tutorials Dojo do a really good job of covering those, making sure that you feel comfortable with just all of the different services, all the different details that go into these services. So really can't recommend those enough. There's hundreds of questions that you get when you purchase one of these sets. You also get flashcards and a study guide. It's around $20 as well. So pretty good investment if you're already going to be spending the money on the exam to definitely ensure that you feel a little better actually going into exam day using these practice exams. So yeah, that's kind of my path, how I've gotten to this point. So want to leave off with some just general tips that I've either seen when looking up how to study for exams, what exams to take, and then kind of some lessons that I've learned through my certification path as well. So first off, kind of one of the questions is, which certifications should I go for? One of the things that I've kind of found and also read about is that skipping the cloud practitioner exam can be a good idea depending on what your overall aim is. So going through those certification paths, I think we kind of saw that AWS recommends getting this exam or getting this certification no matter what path you're on. I don't know if that is always the best idea. Definitely if you're a recruiter or a project manager, someone who kind of works near development but isn't actually doing development day to day, you just want to know about the different services AWS provides, kind of learn the lingo of cloud-based providers. This is definitely helpful for that. You will become cloud fluent, learn about all the different AWS services. But if you want to actually implement these services, deploy resources, this is not going to get you there. So if you are someone who is a developer, cloud engineer, DevOps, kind of whatever area you're in, if you're day-to-day deploying resources, working with AWS services, I would recommend just going for an associate certification. You will learn a lot of the cloud terminology, a lot of the services that AWS provides along the way, but you also get that hands-on experience to actually implement these services later on down the road and in your day-to-day application without having to do 2 exams, paying for 2 of those, doing 2 courses. So it kind of just makes that path a little cheaper, a little quicker if you just go straight for that associate. And then so after you kind of decide what certification should I go for, the actual studying for the exam, like I mentioned earlier, Adrian Cantrell's course at learncantrell.io. Really can't recommend that enough. It is so helpful for getting hands-on experience with all the different services. The lectures are also amazing. Those diagrams are super helpful to figure out the different implementation pieces, how different services interact, how different deployment details and implementation details work together. So really can't recommend that enough. That has definitely made me a lot more comfortable with AWS in my day-to-day experience. And then kind of a little contrast to that is Stefan Merrick at Udemy. He has a lot of different courses on AWS certifications. I personally have not used any of them, but Cantrell and Merrick are definitely the 2 names that I saw the most when trying to look up courses to use. This course is a little more focused on the exam, a little shorter, kind of less hands-on experience. But if you are somebody who has maybe worked with AWS for a year or so, you want to get the certification for an associate exam or something like that, you feel comfortable with the console, deploying, work with AWS, but you just want to focus on the exam, make sure you can pick up on some of the services you haven't used in a while. This is a shorter course, probably easier to work through, and it will prepare you for the exam super well. So would recommend that as a possibility as well. The last kind of study tip that I have is those Tutorial Dojo practice exams that I mentioned earlier. John Bonzo's practice exams are hailed as the greatest exam resource out there. Can't recommend them enough. They helped me a ton in studying. Hundreds of questions, different modes for you to study with, depending on how comfortable you are with the material or just how you like to study. So you can tailor kind of the questions, the different modes to your needs. Super helpful there. A quick tip with that is that they recommend getting around 90% on the practice exams before taking the real exam. You'd only need a 72% roughly to pass the certification exams, but with kind of seeing the repeat questions over and over, 90% on those practice exams will kind of translate to at least 72% on the actual exam. And that's kind of the approach I took as well, making sure that I was getting around 90 to 100% on these exams before the actual exam. And if you aren't feeling super confident, you can reschedule exams. You can only reschedule it once though. So just a heads up, if you push it off a week or two to give yourself some more time to study and then still don't feel ready, you cannot reschedule it again. You will have to cancel your exam. So just something to be mindful of there. And then lastly, so it's actually time to register for the exam, take the exam. What does that process look like? So right off the bat with registering, it is around $100 to $300 for each certification exam. Not super cheap, but you do get 50% off your next test after each test. So if you get the class practitioner exam, it's going to be $100 for that first one. And then the next one you go for, it'll be around $75 to $150, depending on what level exam you are going for. And then exam availability, these are offered in person and virtually as well. The in-person and virtual are done through Pearson. So pretty big company. I would imagine they have a lot of available testing centers. I've only done these virtually, so I can't really speak to how available they are. But given that it's Pearson, I would assume it's not super difficult to find an exam center and a time that works for you. Virtually, there are hundreds of options every day. There are a bunch of different times to take it. So it should be fairly easy to find a exam, register for it at a time that works for you. And then kind of going into the actual virtual testing experience. So that is what I have done. So I can kind of speak to that, give some words of caution, I would say. The rules for the virtual setup are very strict. You can't take a break, can't have snacks, no reading aloud, no headphones, no leaving the room. If you leave the camera, they will cancel your exam. I can definitely attest to this. I was kind of like leaning forward to think and kind of move around, and my proctor would come in, yell at me, say that they would cancel my exam if I kept leaving the camera. So definitely something to be mindful of there. You also can't have anything with writing around you. So definitely want to have a clear desk, really just nothing around you, making sure that there's nothing that they can cancel your exam for. You are allowed to have a drink and chew gum. However, I was chewing gum during my exam and my proctor asked me to spit it out. So caution there, if you want to chew gum, go for it. Be prepared that you might have to spit it out. Have a trash can nearby with no paper with writing on it because they might not like that either. But yeah, you can have a drink. I would recommend just a glass of water, clear glass. Once again, just not giving them any reason to want to cancel your exam or anything like that. So yeah, just definitely something to keep in mind as you are preparing to actually take that exam, making sure there's no reason for them to cancel it or anything. And yeah, so that's kind of all I have today. This has been Hunter Burry speaking technically with Source Allies. If you have a topic you want to see covered, comment it down below. If you want to know more about Source Allies, check out our website. It's in the description or it's in our profile. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.